What's good, Illini Nation? It's your man in the middle, Deon Thomas, and I think I have somewhat recovered from my hangover in Indianapolis. But maybe my man that we have with me, sitting with me tonight, will help me get over it a little bit better. Feel a little bit better about the disappointment, but also about the fun time I had over at Indianapolis. We have one of the absolute best, not only played at the University of Illinois, coached at the University of Illinois, and then went on to be a broadcaster with ESPN. We got one of the best and one of my buddies, and I really appreciate it, Sean Harrington, joining us tonight. What's up, Coach?
How we doing? Thanks for having me on, Deon.
Man, you know, it's always, hey, it's that time of year, man, and I can't think of another or better person to have on than you.
That's high praise. I appreciate it. It's the best time of the year. You start talking about conference tournaments, NCAA tournaments. It's what it's all about. You know how it is. There's a different feel in the arenas when it comes this time of year, whether it's conference tournaments or NCAA tournaments. It's hard to describe, but there's a buzz and there's a little bit of a magical feeling, something that you don't feel in any other game during the season. So it's a blast this time of year.
You know, you have experienced that as a player and a coach. I've experienced it as a player. But I wish the fans could understand how electric, how all of the emotions that you get from the feel of being involved. And like you said, a conference, but then on top of that, you add even more to it when you bring in the NCAA tournament. I mean, this is an amazing opportunity. And I'm sure you'll agree with me when I say this. I absolutely loved this time of year. I mean, I could not be more excited at this time of year, man. I was going crazy. I'm going crazy now. Just thinking about it, and we haven't even gotten rolling yet, man. Whew.
It is. It's a lot of fun. Obviously, you go back to like, this is childhood, right? You're growing up watching these games on TV, dreaming of playing in these atmospheres, dreaming of being in this position. And then when it happens for you, it's incredible. And I mean, you think playing in packed arenas every single night in the Big Ten would prepare you for a Big Ten conference tournament and then also the NCAA, but it doesn't. And I mean, you were involved in bragging rights, as an Illinois fan, it's half and half. But it's still, there's a different feeling in a conference tournament. There's a different feeling in an NCAA tournament than even a bragging rights game where the crowd split down the middle. So it is, I say it's magical. There is a magical feeling that you can't kind of put it on. You can't really describe it, but when you walk between those lines, it's not just another game. And you can feel that. You can feel the excitement. You can feel the energy, and you can feel the pressure. You can really feel the pressure when you get into these games.
And I mean, it's definitely palpable throughout the whole arena. But you talked about the Big Ten tournament. Now, of course, there was no Big Ten tournament when I was coming along. I guess I'm a little long in the tooth, but they started up afterwards. But I'll tell you this: I wish I had the opportunity to play in the Big Ten tournament, having covered it the last 5 years, almost 6 years. Wow, it's hard to believe I've been doing this long. It has been absolutely amazing. It has been electric. Almost never the team that you pick wins, and I'm sure Illinois went in as the number 1 seed this year after tying Wisconsin and having the tiebreaker for the regular season championship. I'm sure no one expected Iowa to sneak in there and win the championship. But before we get to that, let's take a look back. And I know you, as a big Illini fan, when you watch the game, the Illinois game against Indiana, give me just a little bit of your thoughts, coach, player, and analyst.
Yeah, well, here's what I take when I go, when we talk about a tournament, and we'll be real here, right? We're not going to be PC. We're not going to give the answer that everyone thinks you want to hear. Every team comes into that tournament with a different mindset. Mm-hmm. And you can say, how can you not be excited? Of course you want to win. We all want to win, right? Every team walks into Indianapolis and the goal is to win. But every team comes in with a different mindset, and fans may not want to hear that. It may sound like an excuse, but it's the truth. And I was involved in 4 Big Ten tournaments. And my sophomore and junior year, we won the regular season title. So, of course, when we go to the Big Ten tournament, we want to win the Big Ten tournament title. But we didn't have that edge. We didn't have that chip on our shoulder. My senior year, we lost on the last game of the year to Wisconsin on a free throw with 2 seconds to go to lose by 1. Wisconsin's Big Ten champs, we finished second. Mm-hmm. So when we went to the Big Ten tournament, we were hungry. We were angry. We thought we were the best team for the regular season, and we thought this was our opportunity to show it, and we won the Big Ten tournament. So we came in with a different mindset. I promise you, I walked into every Big Ten tournament in my career, and I wanted to win it. But there was a different edge that senior year because we didn't win the regular season. We lost by a game. We felt angry. We felt, and you have that different kind of attitude coming into that tournament. So that's how I approach it. And it's like, how could you lose to Indiana, right? You spanked them at their place, just a month before. You controlled that entire game at Indiana's Assembly Hall, where it's a very tough place to play. Yes. So how can you control that game and then you go on a neutral court and you lose? And it's as simple as Indiana needed that game to get into the NCAA tournament. And it sounds crazy, but Illinois was coming off of probably the most emotional game in Illinois basketball in 17 years. So in program history, you're talking about celebrating on your home court. You're talking about cutting down nets, something that you have set out to do the entire season. Everything led up to that, and you did it. So when you did it, the balloon got let out a little bit, and that's understandable. These are still 18 to 22-year-old men, kids, even in some instance, right? So you're dealing with a lot. So for them to have to turn around, come right back, and get that killer instinct right back, I'm not making excuses, but it's a truth. Everyone came in with a different mindset. So Illinois looked a little flat. They come out, they're not in sync, they're a little flat. And Indiana needed it. They were hungry. They were aggressive. They made some plays when they needed to. How does Wisconsin lose at home to Nebraska? It's the unthinkable. Well, 3 nights before, they beat Purdue, or 4 nights before, and they celebrated. They cut down nets. They gave them the trophy. Their season was over at that point. So Nebraska comes in and beats them. That's how these things happen. Mm-hmm. And so just to take it from that point, is it disappointing Illinois lost? Of course it is. Did they play their best basketball? No, they did not, right? Guys miss shots they normally make, turnovers in situations they don't normally do it. But in general, if you take that game, Illinois was coming off a Big Ten championship. Indiana was desperate and needed to win that game to get into the NCAA tournament. And sometimes that's the difference in these conference tournaments. I try not to look at these conference tournaments and take too much. Obviously, if teams are playing well, that's a good thing going into the NCAA tournament. But I try to not take just those 1 game or 3 games and base the season on that, because everyone's coming in with a little bit of a different mindset.
Yeah, I think you nailed something right on the head. If you look at Illinois last year, and when they won the Big Ten tournament, they felt slighted because Michigan had taken the regular season title. And they went into that Big Ten tournament with a mission. And Coach Underwood actually made comment about that very same thing. He was like, hey, last year we put a lot of emphasis on this because they felt that they had won the regular season, but yet it was taken away from them and given to Michigan. So they were really in the tournament to prove something. Great. I love the way you look at it and the way you have, really pointed out, because I can tell you right now, I know Illini Nation did not look at it that way. And, and that's why I wanted you on this show, brother, for that right there. Because Indiana had just fought a hard-fought match against Michigan where they were down, I believe, 17, and they had to come back. And like you said, this was another opportunity for them to make it to the tournament, to put themselves into the tournament, and they did that. But, one of the teams that surprised me this year, you have to take your hat off to that Penn State team. I mean, they knock off Minnesota, which everyone felt that they would, but then they turned around and knocked off a really good but struggling Ohio State team before playing Purdue and then running it pretty much into a buzzsaw.
Yeah, no, they were playing extremely well, and they played Illinois tough. So we were talking the second to the last game of the season too. So a team that was peaking at the right time. They were starting to play well. They give you problems on the perimeter with the size of some of their guards, some mismatch situations there. And then, that's the beauty of a Big Ten tournament. That's the beauty of an NCAA tournament. You got to get hot for 2 or 3 nights, and you just got to play well for 2 or 3 nights, and you can make some special memories. And Penn State almost did that until they got, into Purdue there. But that showed you kind of the depth of this league too, right? So a team that finishes down towards the bottom can almost beat Illinois at Illinois, and then makes a couple, wins a couple games in the neutral site in the Big Ten, then gives Purdue, a little bit of a test there late in the game. They pulled back in that one. So it showed the strength of the league, and these guys beat up on each other all year. 20 game Big Ten's a grind. So I know you didn't play 20 games. I didn't play 20 games. We were 16 back then, and a 16 game Big Ten's a grind. So a 20 game Big Ten schedule, it's a gauntlet, and you go through some stretches there where it's rough.
It is, and Coach Izzo this year passed Coach Krzyzewski. That's hard. That's a hard thing to do, but he was able to pass Coach K. And this was a Michigan State team that came in struggling in a way into the Big Ten tournament, but they were able to knock off Maryland and then upset Wisconsin, which was a big win for them, and kind of control that game. But it was a little weird, of course, with the ending with the Davis boys and how everything took place. But then they end up running again into Purdue. When you saw that matchup, well, first of all, what was your thoughts? And I know you're down in Florida, so I don't want, if I'm putting you on the spot, I apologize. But everything that took place in that Michigan and Wisconsin game, how did you see that? And was it really? I think it affected the game. And I'll tell you this, and I was watching the little bit that I was able to see before I had to get, myself prepared for my game, for things that we were doing for work. Seemed like the Wisconsin was getting a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. How did you see that game if you had an opportunity to take a look?
Yeah, I didn't get to watch all of it, but some of it. And, for me, Michigan State is the team that I can't figure out this year. I just really can't. So kind of watching that, I think this is maybe one of Coach Izzo's best coaching jobs, to be honest with you. They don't have a star player. Normally Michigan State's got that guy that's going to be, NBA type player. I think they have a bunch of really good role players right now. Kind of when you look at Michigan State, and that's not a Michigan State team. They usually have a couple, horses that you can ride. Yeah. So, that is a team that I'm struggling to figure out. We're at the end of the year, and I really don't know what to expect from them. It's never doubt Izzo, right? When it comes to March, but
especially in March,
it's a team I don't trust them right now. I just don't. And again, maybe it's some of those close losses they have. Maybe it's they don't have that go-to player. So for them to kind of make a run in the Big Ten, again, now I start thinking, here they go again, right? Like here comes Michigan State at the right time. They're going to start playing well. So to be honest with you, that's a team that I am really struggling to figure out, and especially moving into the NCAA. I just don't know what to think about them right now. And I think they got a tough draw. We'll break kind of all that up, coming up earlier or a little bit later. But that's a team right now. I was shocked that Michigan State stayed at the top of the standings as long as they did, to be honest. And I don't feel like they were a top 3-4 team in the Big Ten. There's more talent on other teams. So really good job by Izzo, I thought, this year to even have those guys in contention for that long, and then to go ahead and make a little bit of a run there in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, I agree. Coach, in my opinion, is definitely one of the best coaches in the country, if not the best. He always seems to, like you said, have his guys ready, and they're always ready at the right time. So this was probably, let's go here first. Matt Painter is a good friend of mine. I've always respected, love what Payne has done over there. Really love the way Michigan State, it seems like they just keep rolling along with the things that they do. And I'm talking about, this is going back from Katie and forward to Matt Painter. It just seems like they just keep rolling and rolling along. Plus, that's one of the hardest places in the Big Ten to play. Where do you see this Purdue team? I know, the people that the coaches, where there was an AP poll or one of them, love this Purdue team, kept them up there at the top, which I get. Edie and Ivy, and they had a really good team, really good coaches. How do you see this Purdue team?
Yeah, they're dangerous, but at the same time, a little bit disappointing of a season, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really hard to win a Big Ten championship. It's
Right.
very hard, but to beat Illinois twice, so that's one of the teams
beat them bad.
So you beat them twice, yes, and one of them was taking them out back and really taking care of them, and Mackey. So to win that twice and then still not get a share means you lost to a lot of other teams. So I think that's the disappointing thing for Purdue. Had some really good non-conference wins right early on. Obviously, beat Illinois twice. But you lose to Wisconsin twice, so that obviously that is why they don't win a Big Ten championship. They lose to Wisconsin twice, but, really talented team. They can get you inside and out. Obviously, very difficult matchup when you got a guy like Edie on the inside. Really difficult to match up with Ivy on the outside when he gets in the open floor. So it's a tough matchup for teams, but they don't guard like Purdue guard. So it's kind of like you said, Purdue is Purdue, and you hate going against them normally. Teams are putting up points on this year. So that is obviously cause for concern. And then they struggle to close out games at times, so it's Ivy's the go-to guy, but sometimes I don't know if they can trust him just to go make a play, so Painter does a great job running sets and getting guys shots, but a lot of times those shots aren't for Ivy. It would be for somebody else. So it's almost, you got so many guys that could make the last shot that I don't really know who feels comfortable taking it all the time. I've seen them try to close out games with Williams inside. I've tried to see them, go to Ivy. They've gone to Edie, so like everybody has made a big shot somewhere along the line for them, or they've gone to that guy. They don't have that one guy that they're going to go to. And sometimes I think they get a little stagnant on offense late in games because it's kind of like, who are we going to go to? Who are we going to play through? They run a little more smooth in the flow of the game, but then when it gets down to crunch time, it's kind of like, where are we going to go? We're not just going to get everybody involved. Who's that one guy that we can kind of go to? And they struggle at times. So really talented team. Really talented, but to not win the Big Ten regular season, to not win the Big Ten tournament, I can understand where that fan base right now is feeling a little bit of frustration and a little bit of disappointment with kind of how that season went for them.
Right, and probably a little confused as well, because you're right. They started off high, they beat some really good teams, and seemed to falter somewhere. Like you said, I don't know if it's a little confusion on who the guy is, or having confidence in the guy. I think they have confidence in Ivy as being that guy, but it does seem at times that they become a little discombobulated, and probably the hottest team in the Big Ten right now. And that went on to become the eventual champions after losing a really hard fought game in Champaign, with an opportunity to win it, basically at the buzzer with a shot from the corner from a 40% three-point shooter. If it wasn't for the hard work and effort of DeMonte Williams, maybe there's a different outcome. Yeah. The Iowa Hawkeyes have, in my opinion, over the last, say, 3 to 4 months, been the best team in the Big Ten. And so I wasn't surprised that they won the Big Ten tournament. But what do you see when you have looked at this Iowa team throughout the year?
Yeah, they're playing really well right now. And offensively, they've been doing that for years, right? It's always kind of the knock on Iowa is they can score. They want to get up and down, but they don't guard. But they've been defending here lately. And they've been pretty tough physically, mentally, down the stretch. So they are hot right now. And again, I try not to take too much from the conference tournaments, but they looked really good in the conference tournament, but they also were playing really well before the conference tournament. So this is kind of like a continuation. You're letting it all just kind of blend together. I'm not just taking the 3 games they won in Indy, right? So that was impressive. They're playing well, but they were playing well before that. And lose at Illinois, but I really respected the way they played in that game. I mean, you're coming into a place. I mean, you were there, probably one of the craziest scenes, toughest atmospheres, probably in the Big Ten this year. I'm imagining Wisconsin was right there with the Purdue game, right? So the way that Wisconsin came out against Purdue to clinch at home, those are probably the two toughest environments that anybody had to face this year. At Wisconsin when Purdue went, and at Illinois when Iowa went. And Iowa really controlled that ball game until late. So Illinois was able to kind of, right, midway through the second half, finally kind of take that lead, and you felt like that momentum shifted. But for Iowa to go into Illinois and play the way they did for that long in that environment, and then, like you said, inches away from that shot going down and pulling out the victory. So really impressive there. And then they just continued right on through into the Big Ten. So the way that they had been playing at the end of the year is how they played in the Big Ten tournament. And they're probably the only team that looked the way they did in the Big Ten tournament that they did at the end of the season. They just kind of let that kind of mesh into one. So they're playing extremely well. They are a dangerous team in the NCAA tournament, no question about it. And a really, really good run in Indy there to take the Big Ten title.
Yeah, they were impressive. And I really like they're playing a lot of small ball with the Murray brothers. And it has worked so well for them. I mean, Chris Murray has been able to do some, really good job against bigger guys in the post and then stretch them outside. And then Keegan Murray has just been lights out. I think that kid has probably put himself in the lottery picture. I mean, he's been playing so well. But, before we move on to the next topic, let me tell you guys a little bit about my partners over at Bet Rivers Sportsbook. If you haven't signed up yet with Bet Rivers, now's the time, because they are offering a $250 match bonus for your first deposit. But what sets them apart is that they require just one playthrough to turn your bonus into cash money. With their new Rush Pay instant approval, withdrawing your winnings is safer, more secure, and more reliable. With the NCAA basketball tournament kicking off, it's still time to get in on the action by going to Bet Rivers today by downloading the Bet Rivers iOS app. You must be 21 years or older. If you have a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLERS. So, Sean, we talked about the Big Ten tournament. Now, let's kind of dissect these teams and their matchups as they go into the NCAA tournament. The Big Ten, again, dominant conference with the majority of the teams going in this year with 9. And there's going to be some people that crinkle up their eyeballs, with some of the teams that have gotten in there. But I have watched college basketball all year, and of course, covering Illinois, I've covered the Big Ten. I didn't see a conference, and please give me your opinion, from top to bottom this year as tough as the Big Ten. Now, the very top of some of the others may be better than the very top of the Big Ten teams, maybe. But what I know is I haven't seen one from 1 through 10 as tough as the Big Ten. What do you think?
And the only one I would put up there is the Big 12. I would put the Big 12 up there with talking about the depth of that league. The bottom teams in that league were a very tough out as well. So, I would say those were the two best leagues, top to bottom. Like you said, every night you got to bring it, and there's no easy one. So I would agree. The Big Ten was very difficult this year, and the Big 12 was right there with it. So you kind of look at, who finished kind of the bottom half of those leagues. When you start talking like a West Virginia, a Kansas State, Iowa State is in the NCAA tournament, and they finished way down. So that was a tough run in the Big 12 as well. But yeah, both conferences I think separated themselves as far as depth and every night having a good opponent that you're facing.
Yeah, and it's going to be some rough starting. Coming here March 15th, 16th, we got those first 4 play-in games. We talked about that Indiana team that needed to fight and scratch to get past Michigan and then to get past a really good Illinois team. So now they're in the East bracket and they're going up against Wyoming. Now, I have to say, I haven't seen a whole lot of Wyoming, but when they were doing the selection Sunday, seems like that Wyoming team is pretty doggone good. What do you see Or what do you think Indiana needs to do to be successful and move past Wyoming in their first game?
Yeah, I mean, really play the way that they've been playing, as a balanced attack inside and out. Jackson Davis has been playing great, in the tournament. So to get him going, I think Indiana, it's the quick turnaround. And that's the big thing in the NCAA tournament is you don't know your opponent, right? You don't have the scouting like you normally have. So can Indiana play a little bit more of a free-flowing game? I think that'll be important for them. They don't want to have a grinded out game. See if they can get up and down a little bit more. That tends to be what happens sometimes in the NCAA tournament is teams that have just gotten bogged down in conference play. You get to get loose and a little bit more free and take advantage of that. So, to me, it's a second life for Indiana. 5 days ago, 6 days ago, they're probably not in the NCAA tournament, and they had to win 2 games to get in, and they're in the playing game. So that speaks to exactly where the committee thought they were, is they're one of the last teams in. So, they have nothing to lose kind of at this point. And you mentioned Wyoming coming from a very good conference, but they finished 4th in that conference, so it's, they got 4 teams in. So it's kind of one of those, they have to impose their will on them and really jump on them early. And hopefully, for an Indiana fan, then that they don't, kind of get into that, upset mind kind of a thing, because Indiana should be a favorite in that one. And that's a game that they should win and should move on into the, the bracket then of the field of 64 at that point.
Now, I agree. I think I like Indiana in that game, and I really like them because of the play of the transfer guard from Pitt, Xavier Johnson. I mean, man, to watch this kid play and how he utilized the pick and rolls against Illinois was high level. Let's just say it. I mean, his ability to get there, knock down the little mid-range shot, to get to the basket, to distribute the ball to others. I mean, over the last, I'd say 6 weeks, he's averaged close to 20 points a game. So that inside-outside combination between he and Trace Jackson Davis, I think is going to be really what pushes them over. Excuse me. Really what pushes them over the top of that Wyoming team. And then our next game, we're going to go west, where now you got Rutgers, who I believe is a very good team, going up against a stout Notre Dame team who Illinois beat earlier this year. And of course, Illinois split games with Rutgers in their home and away series. How do you see that matchup taking place? But I tell you, because I love this Rutgers team. I love what Coach Pico has done with them since he's been there. He's made them a rough, tumble, but yet skilled team at the same time.
Yeah, no, it's, that's a team, again, they went through that stretch there in the middle of the Big Ten. It was really impressive. So you're not going to find a team on the bubble that has better quality wins than Rutgers. And it's kind of a mindset. You said, like, Pikel's done a really good job of making them tough, making them physical, grind it out, right? Like you're going to work for everything you get against Rutgers. There's nothing easy. I like that team. Harper obviously can light you up at any time and go for 20 or 30 points potentially and carry a team. You need someone like that in an NCAA tournament atmosphere. You need a go-to guy that can get you buckets, that can get you a shot when you're struggling. So they've got that guy that could go and get you one if everybody else is struggling. It's not a one-man team, but they do have that one guy that if you get into that scoring drought, we know we've got, someone that we can feed and he can go get us a bucket. So, Notre Dame, it's hard to get a read on them. I think the ACC is as bad as it's been in my lifetime, probably.
Agreed.
It's just, they had a down year. There's not a lot of top heavy teams on that, in there. It's Duke and it's everybody else in that conference this year. There just wasn't much separation between 2 and probably 11, in that league. It was just a bunch of teams that were solid teams, but no great teams. So, when's the last time the second place team in the ACC is in a playing game? Yeah, I mean, so that just kind of tells you the strength of where that league was. So, how good is Notre Dame? I think I would pick Rutgers in that one just because I think Rutgers has probably been through a bigger grind in their
Yeah.
conference season, and they beat better teams. They played against the best, and they beat the best this year in the Big Ten, so that they're capable of winning big games.
I agree with you 100%. Plus, I like the play of their guards, Geo Baker and McCahey, and they have big guards too. I mean, so it's going to be interesting to see those guys go up against whomever they're playing after this Notre Dame game, because I think they're a threat. To play against anyone. As you mentioned, Ron Harper Jr. can give you buckets, but they have Alabama. But Ron Harper Jr. can give you buckets. You got, Pat McConnell is one of the best defensive players in the country, having won the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. So they can really hit you from a number of spots. But let's move over into the West bracket. And in that West bracket, as we talk about the play-in game between Rutgers and Notre Dame, the winner gets Alabama. But so we don't have to really go into that one. But you look at this Michigan State game against Davidson. I'm a little nervous about that game right there.
Yeah, I would agree. Davidson, very good team. I wouldn't call 10-7 games a crazy upset, but that could be an upset. And again, it's what we talked about a little bit earlier. I hate going against Tom Izzo. I don't even like to think about that in March, but it's just not one of his better teams. It just isn't. And you wonder where some of that scoring could come from at times. They can go into some of their droughts. They've shown flashes this year. They have some big wins, but I don't know if I trust them. And I could see a slip up there in the Big Ten as Michigan State potentially taking an early exit. More than likely, if they were to win, they get Duke. I don't see them getting past Duke. So I think it's a shorter trip for Michigan State this year. And I would not be surprised if they fell in that first one. Just because, like I said, I just don't trust, anybody on that team to maybe go make a play when you need one. It's just not the firepower that we've seen out of Michigan State in the past.
Yeah, they've been kind of finishing by committee, which is really, like you said, is really odd for them. I mean, and that Davidson team is really good. So it's going to be a struggle for them. But we're going to move down to the East bracket where we have Purdue. Purdue's first game is against Yale. I'll tell you this. If Matt Painter loses to Yale, I think Matt may cut every player off his team. Cut every player off his team. And I hate to say that, but they're just so much more talented than this Yale team with the 3-14 matchup. But that's why I have the experts on here. I want to hear your thoughts.
No, I would agree. And again, we talked about Purdue, a little bit of a disappointing year. Yeah, if you're not winning the Big Ten regular season, you're not winning the Big Ten title, Big Ten tournament title. They should have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. They should be coming in with a little bit of something to prove. So they should take care of Yale. You just talk about the depth of Purdue alone in a ball game like that. They should be able to win that one. It shouldn't be any problem. And then so just kind of moving them along. It's a Texas or a Virginia Tech team. Virginia Tech obviously just went on a huge run in the ACC tournament. But I like Purdue in both of those matchups. It's just I think Purdue should be able to get to a Sweet 16.
Yes.
They would run into Kentucky in that situation. And coming into the NCAA tournament, I like Gonzaga, Arizona, and Kentucky. It's kind of my top three looking. I didn't know how it was going to play out. Obviously, Kentucky being a 2, they could have been in with Gonzaga or Arizona. They can't all make the Final Four, but those are kind of the three teams that I was eyeing as who could really win this thing. Kind of going forward. So that would put Kentucky and Purdue in the Sweet 16. I think it'd be an incredible ball game. It'd be a really good matchup. Purdue has the talent. They've got, we talked about it, inside out, just balanced attack. But that'd be a tough one for them.
They got to play some defense, boy.
They got to play defense. And that's exactly right. Kentucky can really score. And we haven't seen Purdue lock teams up defensively on a consistent basis this year. So I think they would fall potentially in that Sweet 16 game to Kentucky. And let's be honest, for a Purdue team that was ranked in the top 5 for a good amount of stretch in the season, if they were to not win, they didn't win the Big Ten season. They didn't win a Big Ten tournament. If they were to get knocked out in a Sweet 16, it's a disappointing season, I think, for Purdue, for as high ranked as they were for a majority of the season.
I would agree with that. I'm hoping that they play a lot better. And like you said, come out with that chip on their shoulder. That's going to be a great game. But I will say this, I would love to see them move on and come up against Gonzaga. You know, I like the big fella up in Gonzaga, but man, the wind blows too hard and he's gonna go flying around. So I'd love to see him and Edie bump heads, man, just to see if the skill
Two completely different players, right? Two completely different players.
Exactly, opposite ends of the spectrum. Would love to see just that matchup. I don't think they would put him on Edie, but I'd love to see just what they would do with that. But let's move over to the Midwest region. So in that Midwest region, of course, we got Iowa, we have Wisconsin, and eventually they may end up bumping into each other. But let's look at Wisconsin first. I think this is really set up for Wisconsin to be successful. They come out against Colgate, and then you have LSU or Iowa State. I think Wisconsin gets past either of those guys, as you said, with Purdue over there, which sets them up with a head-to-head, which I believe would be against Auburn. But again, your thoughts on that bracket and on that section of the Midwest and with Wisconsin?
Yeah, no, I would agree. Wisconsin's a team, they don't win pretty, right? I mean, like, how many close games did they win this year in the Big Ten? You just felt like, oh, they're about to lose this game. They pull it out. They're about to lose this game. They're going to pull it out. So they don't wow you. And so coming into the NCAA tournament, I'm thinking, I don't know if they're going to win a couple games, right? They could even be a first round upset. That's my mentality coming in. But then the bracket gets released, and I kind of like their draw. It's Colgate. It's a team that they can definitely beat. And then an Iowa State team who really took their lumps in the Big 12. I mean, they really got banged up good. So can they even kind of finish out the season? And LSU now doesn't have a head coach, right? So, I mean, Will Wade's not going to be coaching. And so what are they going to look like? We don't even know what they're going to look like. So you move that along in Milwaukee as well, right? So, I mean, like, you get to play in Milwaukee. You kind of get that part of the bracket that looks good for you. And then you would get more than likely Auburn, if everything kind of plays out, and two completely different styles. Yep. And that would be interesting to see if they're going to play someone in advance. That could be the type of game that they could advance, because if they can slow down Auburn, get Auburn to play a half court game. I don't love Auburn's guard play, and I think that could maybe favor Wisconsin. So Wisconsin takes the early exit in the Big Ten tournament. Again, I don't usually take that much. Like I said, you try to not look at just the Big Ten tournament and project what's going to happen. But early exits, you're disappointed. But then you see the bracket; they've got a chance to make a run to an Elite Eight potentially.
They do, and it is so hard for any other team that has never had to play against Badger ball.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because it's a horse of a different color, man, and it's just tough. But when you have guys like Johnny Davis, so what they've done, they've sprinkled some athleticism to go in with Johnny Davis and Brad Davis, and it really created a unique Badger ball team. And fans, you guys know what Badger ball is. You've seen it for umpteen years. It's going to be really interesting to see that matchup. And like you said, if they can slow Auburn down, which I think they can, they got the Big Ten Coach of the Year, and I will say probably will end up being up there as one of the runners for National Coach of the Year, Greg Gard, because they weren't picked in to do anything anywhere. And they stayed in the top 25, top 15 basically all year. So it's going to be a great matchup down there. We're going to move to the top part of that division, which has Iowa in it. And again, I like the matchups for Iowa. I mean, they're going against Richmond. Then you get a Providence team that I think Providence is really good, but I feel good about Iowa in that game. Or a South Dakota team. How do you see that part of the bracket, Sean?
Yeah, and obviously, South Dakota State can really score. South Dakota State. So South Dakota State is a team that could potentially be your matchup then there in that round of 32. So that would favor better for Iowa, potentially, just because Providence is going to grind you out. They're going to be a more physical game. And in the past, that was probably something that Iowa would struggle with, right? They want to play a more of a free-flowing game, up and down, but we mentioned it. Iowa's guarding better. They can win the grinded out game. They won a couple grinded out games in the Big Ten tournament. They won some grinded out games towards the end of the Big Ten season, but they can really score. So if it's South Dakota State, I like Iowa because they can probably play their pace and they can get up and down, they can score, and I like that. If it's Providence, I think Providence could grind it out a little bit and muddy it up and make it an ugly looking game, but it is a game that Iowa can still win because they've proven this year now that they can play a little bit slower and still win, and you have to be able to do that. So I do like that draw. I do think Providence is tough. You talk about Ed Cooley, the way he gets his guys playing, and being physical and tough minded. That's a tough second round game with a quick turnaround there for Iowa. But they're all tough when you get to that point. If you're starting to get to the round of 32, you're starting to get to the Sweet 16, you got to beat good teams. And that is a good team, but Iowa is a team that could definitely make a run. And would they match up with a potential Kansas then in the Sweet 16? And this isn't Kansas's best team either. They had a terrific year. Give them a lot of credit to win the Big 12, win the Big 12 tournament as well. To do the double dip there, it's impressive because this is not the most talented team that we've seen in Lawrence in several years either. So Iowa could give them some fits with the Murray brothers stepping out on the perimeter, and you start talking about Kansas's bigs. They're going to have to come out and defend that now. So so that would cause some matchup mismatches potentially in Iowa's favor. So the bracket sets up for Iowa to potentially make a run. And find themselves potentially in the Elite Eight. And wouldn't it be something if you get a Wisconsin-Iowa game in the Elite Eight and you get a Big Ten team, then guarantee the Final Four? And that's not out of the question. You could see an Iowa-Wisconsin matchup in the Elite Eight.
Agreed. A lot of people were iffy on if Michigan should be there, but they're there.
Yep.
Having fought through a tough end of the season, of course, with Coach Howard being suspended 5 games. They're coming up against a Colorado State team that's pretty doggone good. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to start with this matchup because you're talking about upset alerts. This is an upset alert. Loyola Chicago is pretty doggone good. Ohio State is struggling right now. And it seems they're like a ship without a rudder. Yeah. I don't know what's going on with them. They're not defending. They're just not playing well. I mean, E.J. Liddell is amazing. I mean, he's one of the best players in the country. I'm forgetting the freshman's name, and I covered them and just watched them, so I don't know why I don't remember. But he was freshman of the year in the Big Ten. But for some reason, they seem like they can't find their footing. And now they're coming up against an older Loyola Chicago team that is used to winning. The Coach Valentine was on the staff with Porter Moser, when they beat Illinois and when they made some runs. And so this team is used to winning. How do you see that matchup? That's a scary one for Ohio State.
It is. Yes. And you mentioned Ohio State struggling. Obviously, they played a lot of games in a short stretch at the end of the year. They had to make up some games. And we talked about how tough the Big Ten is. You just kind of wonder if they ran out of gas a little bit. I think Young missed some games as well there down the stretch as well. So is health an issue kind of for this team right now? Are they healthy going into the NCAA tournament? Are their legs there, going into the NCAA tournament? Loyola is going to defend. And obviously, Porter Moser was a terrific coach, but they got Drew Valentine now, and he's basically Porter Moser, 2.0. Yeah, I mean, he took a lot of the same kind of things, and they're going to guard. They're going to play hard. So the players on that team have been in these moments, right? So it's a team that guys have had experience. So it's a tough one for Ohio State. That's a tough draw. For a 7 seed to get Loyola and then Villanova, I'd be shocked if Ohio State got out of the first weekend, and wouldn't be surprised if they potentially lost in that first game.
Yeah. And then you got Michigan, who, had a tough closeout to the season, as I mentioned, going up against Colorado State with a potential matchup against, Tennessee. Who saw Tennessee win in the SEC?
Right.
I don't know if it was me, but man, they played and they looked really well doing it.
Tennessee looks really good right now. So that is again, don't know if Michigan can get past Colorado State, to be honest. Colorado State's really good. So I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan loses right there, but then you get probably a Tennessee team that's playing as good as anybody down the stretch in the SEC and then winning the SEC tournament. So this is a good bracket. I look at this bracket as a whole right here, and you start talking Villanova, Tennessee. We're about to get into Illinois, Arizona. It's very top heavy. I like those four teams a lot. I think all four of those teams are really, really good in that bracket. That's a loaded bracket, in my opinion, 1 through 4. I think 1 through 4, that could probably be the toughest bracket of any of the four when you look at the top 4 seeds, in my opinion.
No, I agree with you 100%. And you just gave a precursor. Our alma mater is up against Chattanooga, which, I think they win this Chattanooga game against a former Badger assistant coach. But then that leads them to a possible rematch in probably the second best atmosphere I have seen in Champaign-Urbana, other than the game against Iowa, the Arizona game. Mm-hmm. But let's look at this potential matchup first, because I think this is the one that should probably keep Illini Nation up a little bit at night. That 4-5 matchup against Houston.
Houston's good. And I did a lot of games in the American this year. So I got to see Houston, call the game of Houston's this year, saw a lot of the teams that they were playing against. Calvin Sampson's done a terrific job with this team. Yeah. This team is physical.
Of course, everybody's not going to be happy about playing against Coach Sampson.
Exactly right. They're a little bit of a back history there while he was at Indiana, right? Yep. But they're physical. They're real physical, and they guard. They have multiple big bodies that they could throw at Kofi. So that's always the kind of thing I think, where could Illinois slip up? Well, it's teams. That's why Illinois struggled against Purdue. Purdue has multiple bigs that you can put up against Kofi. Not completely stop him, but you can contain him, right? It's not a complete mismatch on the inside. So Houston's got multiple bodies. They've got 3 or 4 guys that they're going to throw at him. Houston is very thin, though, as far as depth. They had 2 injuries during the year for people that didn't follow them: Marcus Sasser and Tremont Mark. So 2 of their top 5 scorers, they have played basically the entire conference season without. So They are a very good team, but they are missing some of their firepower. And what happens with Houston sometimes is they play so hard that they wear out towards the end of games. So they can get tired as the game moves on. So if that's an Illinois-Houston matchup, Houston's going to play a very good UAB team, first of all, so they got to get past that. So they're going to exert a lot of energy in that one. But if they get past that one, this will be their second game in 3 days. And Houston is a team that could potentially wear down as the game goes on. I've seen that happen a little bit in their game. So that would be advantage Illinois in that situation. Could they grind it out, wear them down, make the pace a little bit faster if they can, to get it going up and down, and grind and wear that team down, because they do not have much of a bench. They're going to play 8, and that's being generous. They usually probably play 7 guys, and sometimes it's a little closer to 6. So it's a thin roster on the perimeter, really only playing 4 guards. But it is a team that can give Illinois some trouble. When they go small with Fabian White playing the 5, he can knock down 3s. So Kofi's going to maybe have to come out and guard a guy that, can shoot 40% from 3. So it's a little bit of a tough matchup, but then they have the size to defend Kofi a little bit on the other end. So tough matchup, real tough matchup. Like I said, I like that it'd be the second game, and I would want the pace to be a little bit quicker to try to wear Houston down a little bit and take advantage of that depth.
Great job, Coach. I love that. I love it all. I really like all of that. So here you go. Now I'm going to have you pull the rabbit out the hat, Sean. Which Big Ten team goes the furthest?
This is a tough one, and it really comes down to matchups probably, and it's Wisconsin's a team I feel I don't like them the most, and I think they're the team that could potentially go the farthest just because of the matchups. I don't trust them. I don't think they're playing great basketball to move on, but I like their pull. I think Illinois got a tough draw. I think Houston's a very tough second matchup, and I mentioned it was Gonzaga, Arizona, and Kentucky were the three teams that I thought were probably the scariest come tournament time, and Illinois would have to go through in Arizona. So that's a tough matchup for them. So I could see Illinois getting to a Sweet 16. I can see Iowa and Wisconsin getting to a Sweet 16, and potentially Purdue. And I don't know if any of them could potentially win those games. That's kind of where I see is could one or two of those teams break through. So those are the four that I could see being in a Sweet 16. And I could potentially see Wisconsin against an Auburn team being the one that could win that. I think that's the easiest matchup. Iowa would have to beat Kansas more than likely. Illinois would have to beat Arizona more than likely. Yeah. So Wisconsin by bracket could be the one that would potentially go the furthest, but I see four teams probably in the Big Ten getting to the Sweet 16.
Man, I love that, Sean. And that's why I had you on here, man. That's why I couldn't have a better person on here than you, because the way you just broke that down was masterful, my friend. But I will say this, and I'm sure Illini Nation is going to be excited because we faced Arizona without Andre Curbelo and without some healthy players and things of that nature. So I'm looking forward to seeing that matchup with everybody at 100%. But man, Arizona is really, really, really good.
Yeah. But I like that we played them already. That's a big key. It's a big key and you have that extra edge. That's what we talked about. When you lose to a team, you've got a little bit of an edge when you play them that next time. So I like that Illinois has at least seen them already. Kerr, what's the deal with Kerr, right? If his ankle's not healthy and he can't play, I think that's a big thing for Arizona. They played great in the Pac-12 tournament without him, but that's a big piece to the puzzle if he's not able to play in that Sweet 16 game, depending on how he is.
Yeah, because in Champaign, Illinois had him down until Kerr decided to start playing because he was playing point guard before. He was distributing and it was like, no, I don't need to score. And then all of a sudden he was like, okay, light switch time. And he turned it on. So, kind of the tables could be turned if he's not healthy this time around. But Sean, I appreciate you, man. Yep. This was absolutely amazing. It was fabulous. I hope I can bump into you while we're all out there on the road, man. It's always, always a pleasure sitting with you. But Illini Nation, there's your bracket busters. Oh, you fill them out. Take a look. I know everybody's going to be like me and have Illinois going to the championship, even though a lot of the times it's not realistic, but that's just the homer in me on Champagne. And
right. You got to fill one out with your heart and you got to fill one out with your head.
There you go.
That's what you got to do. You got to have two brackets there.
There you go. Well, Sean, I appreciate you, man. And Illini fans, thank you for joining us tonight on Champagne on Ice. To my partners at the Field of 68, thank you. This has been another great year. Looking forward to continuing to move forward and build and grow with this crew. If you have not subscribed to them yet, Illini Nation, look up Field of 68 Media. They carry a lot of great content, and they have been absolutely fabulous to your boy. And to my partners over at Bet River Sportsbook, again, Champagne on Ice isn't here if it's not for you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And looking forward to it, Sean. We're getting ready to go, baby. It's that time.
Enjoy the tournament.
All right, brother. Take care. Be safe.